Good afternoon, Rabbi Azman. Thank you so much for joining us for another interview today. We are very, very happy to welcome you to Washington. Ukrainian Week is taking place right now here in Washington, D.C. And right now, Ukraine's voice is being heard louder than ever before. Right here in Washington, the place where all the decisions are made. We know you've already given several speeches on some very big stages. Thank you so much for joining us. And speaking at the Freedom Has a Name Ukraine Conference, which was held under the leadership of Pastor Mark Burns on the AllatRa platform. We are so grateful to you for being here and speaking the truth about what's actually happening in Ukraine. Could you tell us a bit about how this week has been for you? Where have you been, and what have you been working on? Perhaps there are some very important messages to share with both Ukrainians and the international community.
Thank you. I believe this past week, Ukrainian Week, has been very important, crucially important, because we needed to get the truth out about what is really happening in Ukraine. And what's happening in Ukraine right now is a horrific war. It didn't start just now. It's been going on for 4 years now. A lot of people are exhausted, and some have even forgotten. Here in America, many have forgotten and think the war is already over. That's why it was so important to convey this in every single speech I gave. And I was speaking almost every single day, sometimes even twice a day, addressing large audiences, medium and small ones, groups of people, and even one-on-one conversations. I used every opportunity, in Congress, in the Senate, and at the event Mark Burns organized in Congress. I kept telling people, look, I've just arrived from Ukraine, and there, Russia is destroying Ukraine's infrastructure. People are freezing. They are cold, sitting in the dark without electricity, heating, without water, and this is a war crime. I explained to them that while we are sitting here in a warm, heated room, people over there are quite literally freezing. And God forbid there's no telling how many people, grandmothers, grandfathers, might not survive this winter. That's why we need to act now. And so I spoke, and, if I may say so, demanded action. Of course, one cannot demand, but to some extent, it was a call to action, let's call it that, for immediate help for Ukraine, help from the U.S. administration, from Congress, the Senate, and simply from various NGOs, charities, and humanitarian groups. We spoke with religious leaders. There were quite a lot of them here. Thousands of people attended these events. It's incredibly important that people came from all across the United States. You know, I actually spoke to the largest delegation there, and they told me they came from Washington State, not Washington, D.C., where we are now, but Washington State, way out on the West Coast. This delegation flew all the way out here, and they were deeply interested in what's happening in Ukraine. After my talk, some of them came up and said, "We will come to Ukraine soon, we'll see it for ourselves, and we won't just come, we will help and invest." And I thought, wow, that means some seeds have sprouted or are starting to sprout right here and now. I want to thank the organizers of this conference because for a whole week, everyone here spoke about Ukraine. You know, today was the final Shabbat. I thought I'd rest on Shabbat. I was hoping to rest, but yesterday and today, we ended up spending Shabbat right in the hotel lobby where all my events were taking place. And still, people kept coming up to me. We kept talking and people were interested. I am sure our joint efforts won't be in vain, and we're going to see the fruits very soon.
Absolutely. And I can confirm it because I saw how many people came up to you. I'd like to mention here how important your voice and your advocacy are. People are really listening to you here, and not just here. It's so important for them to hear the truth from you, and to hear it directly from people who've just come from Ukraine and can explain what's actually happening on the ground, because there really isn't enough information out there. And the American public desperately needs to hear what's going on right now, what kind of help is needed, and what needs to be done. Could you please tell us a bit more now so that both the Ukrainian diaspora and the international community can understand the current situation in Ukraine? I know you have a huge initiative to help people stay warm and get food. Could you tell us how you organize this and what is happening in Anatevka right now?
Look, when I see people in trouble, people have been suffering for 4 years. But now we are facing something new, a harsh winter. These Russian barbarians, so to speak, are deliberately attacking Ukrainian facilities and major cities like Kyiv, Odessa, Kharkiv, and others right when the winter is severe, during the peak of the freezing cold. They are destroying power stations, thermal power stations, and heating grids. This is equivalent to, I've said this before, I compare it to the siege of Leningrad. We actually just passed the anniversary of the siege of Leningrad, which my father survived as a young boy. It started in 1941 or 42 and lasted until 1944. He told me himself that besides hunger, there was a terrible cold. People froze to death. It was the same tactic. The Nazi troops used their planes to destroy the infrastructure. And suddenly I see them doing the exact same thing. Russian planes and missiles are destroying it. Imagine an elderly woman living on the 20th floor. The elevator isn't working. She's living in the freezing cold, literally freezing, with no water, no electricity. What is she supposed to do? She can't go up and down those stairs. Sure, we help some people. We help. People help. The city helps. But how much can one help? Kyiv is a city of 3.5 million. Other cities are also in the millions. Even if everyone helps, there are still so many people. And for many, we simply don't know where they live or who exactly needs help. It's terrifying. That's the message I was trying to get across. And so we started to help. I said we're going to use absolutely everything we have to help for as long as it lasts. Someone even told me, listen, on a scale this massive, what can you really do? Okay, you have 1, 2, 3 buses. What difference will that make? I said, well, we can help 100 people, 200, 300, 400. If we start helping, others will follow suit. By the way, I recently read that the military and other mobile centers have joined our initiative. Plus, the city is taking action too. They've set up these warming tents, the points of invincibility. We organized our mitzvah tanks, the tanks of commandments that previously served as our spiritual centers. We retrofitted them to save people as mobile points of invincibility. On average, between 100 to 200 people pass through one mitzvah tank per day. We have 2 mitzvah tanks operating, plus a regular bus that was donated to us a while back. It can hold about 50 people at a time, so even more people go through that one. I'm currently negotiating to get a few more large buses and retrofit them. We've installed power outlets throughout the bus so people can sit in different spots and charge their devices. They can drink some tea, and we provide targeted aid. Or they can just come in to warm up and sit for a while. They come out of their houses. Our bus parks right outside buildings that have lost power. Word gets around quickly. People notify each other on local websites, local WhatsApp groups, and they just come down to warm up. So, we give them physical warmth, but our volunteers also give them warmth of the soul. We do what we can. I think if other people, or anyone with the means, or charitable and volunteer organizations, can do the same, then the more people we save, the better.
How are the children coping with all of this? I know you just mentioned the elderly, and I realize how incredibly hard it is for them. But what is happening with the kids?
My heart just ached. When we first started this program, I would go there myself every day to oversee things, and not just to oversee, but to think through the logistics, how to do it better. Should we park in the same spot every day so people get used to it and know we're there? Or should we move to different locations every day? I'd be there, and For example, a mother would come in with her kids and say, "It's 5 degrees Celsius in our home. We're freezing." They didn't ask for anything. She said, "We just go outside to warm up. We don't know where to go. Sometimes we go into a store or somewhere else." I said, "Come with us. We'll give you shelter at one of our facilities, in Anatevka or elsewhere." We have already sheltered many people. Well, we try to take in as many as we can. Some people asked for blankets, so we bought blankets. For others, well, in short, we are trying to do whatever we can. Unfortunately, our financial resources are limited. We've already exhausted just about everything we had. So, if anyone, let's say, wants to help us, it will all go directly to this. Right now, the need is immense. We are buying diesel for generators and wood pellets for private heating. We have these large heating boilers set up over there. We need food for the people, medicine, and so much more. So if anyone listening to this wants to join in, it is vital right now, today. Have them reach out to us, and I'll tell them exactly how they can help.
Thank you so much for what you are doing. It really is. I don't even know how many people you've already provided warmth for, and how many more you will. Thank you so much.
You know, I want to say, I sometimes feel like there was that movie, Schindler's List, about how Schindler saved the Jews. And at the very end of the movie, he takes out his diamonds, the ring he had, whatever, saying, "I could have saved 100 more people. I could have saved so many more. What do I need these stones for if I could have saved more?" And sometimes, yes, that's exactly how I feel. You know, our guys out there are dropping from exhaustion saying, "Let's take a break. We're just so tired." But then they say, "Listen, how many more people can we save if we just keep working for 1 more hour? Just 1 more hour." That's the thought that is always on my mind.
Do you feel that helping Ukraine is part of your spiritual mission?
You know, today on Shabbat, we read the Torah portion called Yitro, which tells the story of the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. And when the Almighty gave us the Torah, and Torah is the word Ra, which means instruction, a guide for action. So the Torah obligates us. It was given to bring spirituality into this material world. And how do we bring spirituality into the world? Our sages said the world stands on 3 things: on Torah, on prayer, and on good deeds. And I wouldn't say that good deeds are merely material. If we bring aid to people, if we save people, that is spirituality. We do it using material things, but at its core, it is spirituality. That is why we are messengers in this world. That is, the Almighty commands it of us. It is said in our Torah that if someone is in trouble, you cannot just sit there and do nothing. There is a story about the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe. Actually, no, it was the second Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was a very spiritual man, very otherworldly. He was studying Torah and had completely forgotten about the physical world. Meanwhile, upstairs, a baby was crying. He didn't hear it because he was so immersed in prayer and study. But when his father, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, came up to him, he said, "Listen, when a child is crying, you must hear it." So there are people who focus entirely on, yes, we had prayer breakfasts here, for instance. And indeed, prayer is essential. You can't do without prayer. We must turn to the Almighty. But if a person prays all day while a baby cries nearby, and he doesn't save that child, well, in Judaism, that's not just wrong. It means you don't know what you're supposed to be doing. In our tradition, you must put down the book and go save that person. If someone is crying, if someone is suffering, you can't just sit there thinking, "Oh, someone else will save them." No, if you walk past, in fact, there's a specific commandment in the Torah. Do not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. If you walk past and someone is drowning and screaming, you can't say, "Oh, I'm late for a meeting, maybe someone else will save him." No, you are obligated to stop, grab a lifebuoy, and go save him. It's not just a desire, it is a duty. Therefore, I believe that saving people, given what is happening now, people whose lives, health, children, and loved ones are under threat, and soldiers are people too. Saving lives and human health is a mitzvah commandment from the Torah. and therefore, it is spirituality, bringing someone a glass of water so they don't die of thirst or hunger. That is spirituality. If all we do is pray, I mean we must pray. God forbid I ever diminish the importance of prayer. But if we pray while someone is dying nearby and we refuse to hear them, then I don't believe that prayer ever reaches heaven. This is exactly why we live in a material world. The Almighty sent our souls here, wrapped them in material bodies, so that in this material world we can perform practical, material commandments, not just be theorists. There are a lot of theorists out there. They will tell you the right way to do things, the right way to pray, the right way to do this or that, but there is no action behind it. But another person, and this is what I do. Excuse me, but when I get a call and hear about a problem, I immediately start figuring out how to solve it, how to handle the logistics, how to fix it properly, urgently, quickly, without any bureaucracy. That is what it's all about. The Almighty, it is written, Chesed, kindness, built the world. The Almighty built this world on kindness. It is written, Ki shafetz, Chesed hu, for he desires kindness. The Almighty was self-sufficient. He didn't need to create this world. He had everything he needed. He created the world to bestow some kindness upon it. And we must be like the Almighty. Therefore, we must bring kindness and do good. How much good should we do? As much as we can. There are no limits here.
Thank you so much. What you're saying really hits home. As you said, prayer and action absolutely must go hand in hand. Thank you so much for that. Thank you very much. This isn't the first time you've made this journey from Kyiv to Washington, and not just Washington, D.C., but New York and many other places, to bring the truth to the international community. We understand how important this is, because without united efforts, without support, it is very difficult. So thank you very much for this. I'd like to ask you, what message do you have for the international community, the Ukrainian diaspora, and the American people? What is the single most important thing everyone needs to understand about this war in Ukraine? What perhaps has not been conveyed enough? Something that people over here might still be misunderstanding?
You know, I've noticed here in America, once again, that there's still a lot of lingering misunderstanding, or perhaps Russian propaganda is just doing its job in a very, let's say, clever and cunning way, distorting reality. Some people actually think the war is already over, that things have quieted down, or that peace has already been achieved, or that Ukraine has already surrendered, or even that there's no need to help Ukraine because who knows who even lives there. So many of these kinds of narratives just suddenly pop up out of nowhere. I've even met some officials here. That's why it's very important to get the truth out. That's why it's important for your channel and all others to spread the truth. So, to get the truth out, that's one thing. And second is to make sure that Americans and the global community don't succumb to fatigue. Yes, it's been 4 years of war. Everyone is tired. People are fed up. How much longer can this go on? But Ukrainians, they aren't just tired. They are living through a tragedy, and they are not ready to give up. Some people told me, why don't they just let them? Well, okay, Putin wants it, so why don't they just let him have it? Stop fighting, refuse the war. I say, what exactly do you mean? That they surrender? They'll either be completely destroyed or taken into slavery, or, how can anyone even suggest something like that? On the contrary, we must say that these are heroes fighting for their independence against a massively powerful and ruthless enemy that wants to annihilate them, wipe out their culture, their language, their national identity, everything they have. That is why I am conveying this message. As a representative of the Jewish people, whom the Nazis once simply tried to exterminate, both physically and morally, destroying our culture, books, everything, trying to erase the very memory of Jewishness, I feel it is my absolute duty not to stand on the sidelines. but to help. I could have left Ukraine before the war even started, but I didn't, because I see what is happening. This is a repeat of the exact same narrative from World War II, just coming from a different direction. We cannot stay silent, otherwise it will spread to other countries. It's not just about Ukraine. Ukraine is defending not only itself, it is defending Europe, even defending America. Ukraine is defending the entire free world. Look who Russia has allied itself with: Iran. Iran is currently just the same source of evil, destroying its own people. And it wants to destroy Israel. They are supplying Russia with Shahed drones, which are used to bombard peaceful Ukrainian cities every single day. And in return, Russia is paying them back with, who knows, nuclear technologies or other barbaric things. So the empire of evil doesn't sleep. That's why the entire free world, the normal world, must stand on the side of Ukraine and on the side of Israel.
That is so true. Ukraine is playing a very key role because it is fighting not only for its own freedom, but also for the freedom of the entire world. And I really appreciate that you brought up this invincibility of the Ukrainian people, that unbreakable spirit. These are people who refuse to fall into despair, who are truly ready to stand their ground and endure, no matter what. Like you said, a lot of people watch and think, perhaps, that it's all over there, and so on. But if people actually paid attention to what's happening inside Ukraine, they would see that red map every day and see that every single night, there are these attacks, and that this is far from over. What are your thoughts on this invincibility? How do you see these people? What helps the Ukrainian people not to give up?
You know, yesterday at the gala dinner held at the Washington Hotel, the Washington Hilton, there were many people, and one of the speakers was a soldier. Unfortunately, I don't remember his name, but he is a true hero. He shared his story of how he had to survive and fight while completely surrounded by the enemy. They went for about 2.5 days without water, and how at the very last second, the Almighty gave them water, and they fought heroically, saving their friends. And in the end, he and the majority of his friends managed to break out of that encirclement, even though they had zero chance. And this is, such heroic stories. You know, after World War II, there were many heroic stories about Soviet people who fought and made these miraculous escapes. We used to live and learn from these, when we were growing up in the Soviet Union, we were raised on those stories. And now, after this current war, there will be many. In fact, there are already many stories, and I know them because many people tell me them personally. Both military and civilians tell me about these acts of bravery, and I see the heroism of the Ukrainian people with my own eyes. Volunteers who risk their lives. I've known people like that since the very first day of the war. I knew volunteers who died just trying to save people. I know such daredevils, people who aren't afraid of anything. They went into the most dangerous hot zones and continue to do so. These are volunteers, military personnel, and simply people surviving in such places, and they refuse to. Why is Russia bombing the power grid right in the freezing cold? They think people will break and say, that's it, there's nothing we can do, there's no hope, let's just surrender into slavery. Better to be slaves but alive than to be killed. That's what Russia is banking on. That is why I'm explaining this here in America. I say, instead of finding fault with Ukraine, you should be proud. You must, on the contrary, say that these people are heroes, people who refuse to surrender, who keep fighting, even though they are in the minority, with fewer numbers, fewer weapons, fewer resources, but they are still fighting. And we must give them the credit they deserve and help them.
How would you characterize the Ukrainian people in general? What kind of people are they?
Today, the Ukrainian people are a heroic people who, as I said, have not broken. Let's be honest, very few people believed that Ukraine would stand at the beginning of the war. I think even many Ukrainians were surprised
They didn't expect it.
that they held out, keep holding out, and will continue to hold out. And the international community, nobody, or very few, believed it. But it was exactly because of that self-sacrifice, that unity of the nation, that they were able to pull through. The main thing is to carry this forward, because after 4 years of war, everyone gets tired. The soldiers are tired, civilians are tired, and it is incredibly hard mentally. It is very hard. I know it firsthand because I am right there. I don't serve in the military.
You do serve.
I serve, but in a different way. I serve, and even at my age, I see it all. And every day, people ask me, "Why do you need this? Go get some rest." And I say, how can I rest if people out there get no rest? I even say to people in Ukraine, how can you go out and have fun when there are people on the front lines, freezing in a trench somewhere, lying under constant shelling without water or food? And when you truly grasp that, yesterday when the soldiers spoke, these heroes, many people cried. And this is happening every single day. There are people like him every single day. Every day someone dies, someone is crippled, or rather crippled by Russian missiles and artillery. Someone becomes an orphan, someone a widow. And I just can't. It is very hard for me to see this. I try to do something myself and awaken others to do the same.
Thank you so much. How exactly can the international community, the community in America, help Ukraine? What specific ways would you suggest for people to get involved right now?
Well, how should I put it? For example, we are in Washington. Washington is, in a way, the ultimate decision-making center. A lot of decisive actions originate from here. Right now, we see that America wants to, so to speak, bring down the evil Iranian regime, which is destroying other nations and its own people. And when America truly wants to do something, it can do it. That's one thing. We know there is a way. Just remember Ronald Reagan, for example. People need to understand that there is someone in trouble. I sometimes even explain it here in terms of American interests and so on. That might be a more cynical explanation, but whatever the explanation, the ultimate goal is to save lives. But I explain it on a basic humanitarian level. People are dying. People are becoming disabled every single day because we aren't helping them. So right now, they need generators. They need medical supplies, air defense systems. They need a lot of things. For example, to repair the power plants, they need all kinds of spare parts. Can you imagine? I personally think it's an absolute miracle how these energy workers operate. And then Russia deliberately sends missiles just to kill those very workers. They are out there working in the freezing cold, getting frostbite. There aren't enough spare parts. Imagine how much needs to be brought in every time something gets destroyed. It is truly a heroic chapter, let's call it that. Someday, with God's help, when the war ends, and I pray peace comes soon, I think many authors will write about this heroic chapter of the Ukrainian people, and we will uncover just how many incredible acts of heroism took place. That's why the world must not remain indifferent. It must help. How to help? Financially and with specific humanitarian aid. Not just sending whatever is lying around, but sending exactly what is needed. To do that, you need to find out what is needed. Right now, it's generators. It's those, what are they called? Eco-flows, which store energy, power banks, medical supplies. There are so many ways to help. So reach out. We are ready to receive aid and distribute it properly. I always go myself when we receive it. Right now, very little humanitarian aid is coming in, practically none. But when we did receive it, I always went myself to check. Not just that it arrived, but that it reached the right recipients, that it was functional, and that everything was up and running. For instance, we brought in water purification devices. I would go personally to see exactly where they were needed. We would hand them over, and a month later, once everything was connected, I would go back personally to check on it again. I saw people drinking clean water. Everything was fine. It was working. I do it to make sure it doesn't sit in a warehouse somewhere, so that there's no bureaucratic red tape. I believe it's very important that aid is provided promptly and quickly, delivered to the destination, and put to work right away.
Thank you so much, and I want to appeal to everyone. Please continue staying informed about what is happening in Ukraine. Please follow Rabbi Azman. Get involved and absolutely unconditionally support Ukraine.
While I'm here in Washington, D.C., I want to take a moment to thank everyone, the American people, the President of the United States, Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, the Senate, the government, the administration, the State Department, everyone, and simply the American people who helped, are helping, and will, I hope, help Ukraine.
And we thank you for tirelessly coming to Washington and making sure everyone learns the truth, for your incredible advocacy, for never giving up, and for doing so much to help. Thank you very much.
Blessings to you as well.